While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
She should get a Grammy for that performance. Some of the best acting I've seen. All of this ended up being bullshit, being nonsense. And what happened as a result is that the U.S. invaded and occupied Iraq for many years, many decades, still are there, still are destroying that area, which is considered some of the birthplace of many amazing civilizations. Really disgusting stuff to see, and how they use children, empathy, emotion to subvert and to promote empire.
Iranian nuclear weapons development.
They have turned the island into a communist hellhole.
The experiment in Venezuela has failed completely.
One of the biggest like kind of errors on the part of the imperialists that they did with the psychological operation was in 1990, basically in the lead up to the Gulf War, which was a horrible U.S. invasion in the Middle East, and they attacked Iraq, and they invaded and they killed a lot of people. It was this testimony by this young woman who her pseudonym at this testimony was Nayira al-Sabah. And basically, let me just read this article again, right? You know, all the people are going to be like, oh my God, that's Wikipedia. That's not reliable. You know, this is accessible on all their outlets if you want to, you know, fact check or triple check me. But basically, the Nayira testimony is one of the biggest flops of psychological operations by the empire. It was a false testimony given before a U.S. Congressional Human Rights Caucus on October 10, 1990, by a 15-year-old girl who was publicly identified at the time by her first name, Nayira. The testimony was widely publicized and was cited numerous times by U.S. senators and President George H.W. Bush in their rationale to support Kuwait in the Gulf War, basically in their rationale to invade the Middle East, to occupy that area. In 1992, it was revealed that Nayira's last name was al-Sabah and that she was the daughter of Saud al-Sabah, the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, which was allied with the U.S. with imperialism. Furthermore, it was revealed that her testimony was organized as part of the Citizens for a Free Kuwait public relations campaign, which was run by the American public relations firm Hill and Knowlton for the Kuwaiti government. Following this, al-Sabah's testimony has come to be regarded as a classic example of modern atrocity propaganda. So basically, she lied about all these things that Iraqi soldiers were doing. One of the biggest aspects, she said that she saw Iraqi soldiers taking babies out of incubators at a hospital in Kuwait, which ended up being false and ended up not being true. So I want to play a clip of that testimony, and then we'll talk about how they use emotion to try to promote regime change and propaganda.
Our final witness is also using an assumed name, and again, we ask our friends in the media to respect the need for her to protect her family, and we finally call on Nayira to testify.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Nayira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My mother and I were in Kuwait on August 2nd for a peaceful summer holiday. My older sister had a baby on July 29th, and we wanted to spend some time in Kuwait with her. I only pray that none of my 10th grade classmates had a summer vacation like I did. I may have wished sometime that I could be an adult, that I could grow up quickly. What I saw happen to the children of Kuwait and to my country has changed my life forever. It has changed the life of all Kuwaitis, young and old. We are children no more. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There was no milk available for the baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
She should get a Grammy for that performance. Some of the best acting I've seen. All of this ended up being bullshit, being nonsense. And what happened as a result is that the U.S. invaded and occupied Iraq for many years, many decades, still are there, still are destroying that area, which is considered some of the birthplace of many amazing civilizations. Really disgusting stuff to see, and how they use children, empathy, emotion to subvert and to promote empire. Comrade Erica, your thoughts and analysis of all that?
Yeah, it's always children. Because there was a little girl in Syria as well. I forget her name, and then there was the girl from North Korea, who's so there's always children involved, but they always use student movements as well. When you were talking earlier, I was thinking about the newly passed America Competes Act that just passed in the House, and part of that budget is to directly fund NGOs and USAID. One section in it about Africa specifically says to give support for young African leaders initiatives. So it requires the USAID administrator to establish regional centers in Africa to provide in-person and online training. And that's where the money is going for. They're doing things similar in Latin America. So all these NGOs, I think that it's when we look at social media in contrast to the ways that the youth and students movements are being used, it's something that we should be really alerted and really start to pay attention to. And another thing I was thinking of as well when we talk about youth, I was thinking about that the Russian TikTok. Salifu and I have been talking about that TikTok with that black girl for some days now. Not not specifically because a lot of what was said was untruth, but the way that it was said and the way that it caught on, and it's still catching on. I mean, she's being promoted now on on mainstream media as this is the way that news should be reported. Um, but she's running state lines. So if this is the way that our youth is accepting this news, then we already are starting off really bad because we're not starting off from any kind of historically concrete place. We're not starting off with any facts. And the purpose or utility of that video is to pull at that that empathy, that emotion, to find some connection. Like, oh, she's a black girl like me, and she knows what she's talking about. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's the type of the type of psyop that's occurring now. But I do find significance in that it's always youth movements. It's always these random little children that you don't get any other information about. Like, you don't get any history of these children. You don't hear anything about their families except for the one parent that's present that brings them. So it's always like a mom, right? They don't have a dad typically, or if they did have parents, or now they're orphans because of what happened. But they always do find these little obscure children. I think that the little girl in Syria, she got a lot of reception from, like, J.K. Rowling was supporting her and and
Wow.
promoting yeah. So I think that that's something that we really really need to stay on top of and really need to pay attention to, because one, it does work. it, it it very much does work, but it's so prevalent because I don't want to say children are more susceptible because I just, given the amount of adults that are passing and sharing that TikTok around, I don't think it's an issue of children being more susceptible. But I think the utility of children, I'm thinking of the Simpsons episode, um, where well, not even the episode, but just Ned Flanders' wife, who's somebody please think of the children, like just like that sort of empathy pulling thing. Like that's why they always have to use children or youth movements, right? Because I think also the intention of using youth movements is to say like, these old guards, like these older people are just trying to guard a liberation, and the youth know what's going on, and the youth knows how to drive a liberation home, or the youth are the future type of thing, without really any consideration of what's actually happening with the education of our youth and the direction of our youth. Because yeah, they are our future, but that can go either way if we are not the guidance for them. But I think they play on that, right? Especially the ways that we see that what is it, the boomer shit. So they do play on on that a lot.